In life, we're always waiting for the next big moment. Moments that shape the culture. Moments that make history. GCL has been the critical enabler of these extraordinary moments since 1978. From global stages and festivals to famous stadiums and pitches, we transport the world's most valued assets to locations worldwide. From one-of-a-kind supercars to extraordinary auto collections and priceless pieces to exceptional galleries in every corner of the globe. Our strength is drawn from diversity across industries and time zones. 63 locations, 6 continents, 160-plus countries, and 10,000-plus missions a year. Multimodal, mission-ready, delivering seamless operations across air, land, and sea, with precision planning and execution to reach the most remote corners of the world, no matter the timeline. We navigate borders effortlessly, managing carnet and customs brokerage while mitigating risk and securing insurance. So every mission moves forward with confidence. From expert packing and crating to specialized handling, our teams provide a true end-to-end solution, built for any scale. More than logistics, GCL delivers iconic moments that captivate the world. 5 trusted brands united in a shared purpose: to empower the extraordinary.
Let's get excited to talk about some logistics, right?
The non-sexy side of the sport industry. But anyway, as you heard earlier by our keynote speaker, Oscar Sanchez, the Club Cup 25 and the World Cup 26 is in full swing, and lots of progress is being worked on, and some of it's been completed, and there's still a lot more work to be had. We have been lucky enough to be named as the licensed logistics partner for FIFA, and it's such a huge historical and major event that's going to be happening. What I thought we would ask is, Steve, if you could just give us a brief overview of how we got here and just a brief overview of GCL.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. I think most of you are probably aware of SOS Global Express being a wholly owned subsidiary of NEP. We spun out about a little over a year and a half ago. We're now owned by GCL, which stands for Global Critical Logistics. Under that portfolio, we've got SOS Global Express, Rock-it Cargo, Deedle, Cars, and a few other brands. So from an end market standpoint, Rock-it, obviously I think a lot of you are familiar here, we probably own 80% of the global music touring market. SOS Global Express, very big in sports, dynamic, big in film and TV. Deedle, probably number 1 or number 2. From a luxury art standpoint, big relationships with Sotheby's and Christie's. And then Cars, much like the name, we're not too creative on the logistics side, work with a lot of the OEMs, high-end Ferraris, Lamborghinis, some of the exotics. And our footprint from a legacy standpoint, SOS, we were about 115 employees. Under GCL, we're just over 1,000 with staffing plans because of the FIFA relationship to add about another 125 to 130 employees. So when we were acquired, we thought, what best way than to really go after the FIFA relationship. We have long-standing relationships with HBS for many different iterations of FIFA, but we really wanted to come out and bring GCL forward along with SOS and Rock-it. So we were fortunate enough to pursue the FIFA relationship and rewarded about 3 months ago the LPS side of it, or LSP side of it. So we're very excited, and wanted just to make sure, kind of walk through some of the conversations we're currently having with FIFA, with HBS, with this group specifically, and excited to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Can you just explain some of the services that we're providing, please?
Yeah, it's really end-to-end. From a U.S. standpoint, we're fortunate enough that we fall under the HTS classification. 9817, it doesn't mean much, it's not overly cool. The only thing it does, it allows us to import-export without paying any tariffs or duties. So we've got that portion of it, the exemption. So anybody in here, as long as you're bringing equipment in under that classification and back out and not for sale, any type of point of purchase or anything that you would be pushing out to the fans, we can move that in and out duty-free. From Canada, And Mexico standpoint, we're still working on those guidelines with FIFA, but we expect to have those ready sometime early Q4 this year.
Thanks. What are the major lessons that you've learned so far? And as we're obviously in the SVG room, what do the people in this audience really need to understand and be aware of?
Yeah, I think we've been part of SVG. I'm looking at Carrie here. I think for 15, 20 years now, we were one of the first in from an SOS standpoint. And you think you know everything. We were fortunate enough to be part of all of the 16 venue tours over the last 3 months. And every venue is just different. What works in Kansas City does not work in Monterey, which doesn't work in Toronto. And one of the interesting things, we approached FIFA with a 2 warehouse solution, one in Dallas to complement that IBC and one in New York. We've since moved away from that. We still have those 2 major warehouses there just from an overall global standpoint. But we now have micro warehouses at each one of the facilities to help facilitate and move this freight in and out. Every one of these venues has a different accreditation process. FIFA is not responsible for the accreditation. So if I were to come forward and try to work on site, and if I was kicked off for whatever reason, there's nothing FIFA can do, right? So when we look at our drivers and our warehousing, moving everything through this accreditation process is critically important and very complicated, and that's part of the process we're going through right now. I would have assumed it was pretty easy, but every state, local police department has different qualifications and classifications. So we've been working through that process right now, but that's one of the things we're bringing forward as the LSP, is every one of our drivers, every one of our warehouses, anybody on site, from a logistics standpoint and the service we're providing will be fully accredited across each one of the venues. And that was more complicated than I think we thought was going to be.
Fantastic. And what about from a production perspective and streaming and how the operations through all of the different centers, how is the production arena going to deal with that? Yeah,
we were at Dallas, as I'm sure a lot of folks here were last week, and a lot of the brand partners, we're working with almost every single one of the major sponsors. In fact, just to highlight Anheuser-Busch AB, these agencies that Anheuser-Busch, Verizon, like a lot of the big consumer brands, they're still trying to figure out what their activation is and what it looks like. Every footprint is different at the stadium. So again, what works at MetLife is going to look different in Kansas City. So we're very much tied right now to the GMRs, Octagons, Wassermans, 160/90s. They're really controlling a lot of the dialogue, because Anheuser-Busch knows they want to activate at a bottle level. They know that they've got the pouring rights, but they still don't quite have visibility to what their fan village looks like, let alone how they're going to engage with the host cities, which we heard a little bit about today. So we're still kind of in that wait and see. The meetings in Dallas were helpful from our standpoint because we got a better idea from a broadcast component, as well as some of the agencies, kind of the initial plan. So I think over the next 30, 60, 90 days, we'll have a much better idea of what they're going to be doing, not only on site with the host cities, but also with the broadcast partners.
Thanks, Steve. Because we are so entrenched in the FIFA discussions, what we thought we'd do is actually open it up to the room and see, do you have any specific questions? We do have the knowledge and we've got the expertise. Is there any questions that the group would have that they'd like to ask in relation to FIFA?
We have 1 minute and 24 seconds, 23, 22.
Any questions?
We're going to be here all, yes.
Will the current tariff situation and enmity between Canada, the USA, and Mexico cause you any logistical problems?
Very much so. Yeah, it is. It's interesting. We get this question a lot. From a U.S. standpoint, I think we're pretty well sorted. We're working with 2 different facilities in Canada and Mexico. Again, that customs guidance, we are required to have it by early Q4, so we'll distribute that to each one of the broadcast partners. Certainly HBS will have a copy of that, so stay tuned. But with Trump in office, we just don't know. It's exciting.
Any other questions?
No? We'll be here, obviously, for the cocktail hours, so please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I suppose the main thing is with everything happening, and it's happening so quickly, it's just a case of, to get in early, plan early, and that's what we're here for. So if you need any help or assistance, just give us a shout, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.